Well, we wrote all the parts for all the guys, except for Bob Balaban. We didn't know who we were going to write that part for. We ran into Bob at a party, and I looked at Grant and I was like, "That's the guy that Bill Murray should be giving a hard time to." But the rest of them, we wrote it for him, and we sent him to him. Bill's a good friend. He's staying in my house right now, actually. Um, and John Goodman and I worked together back on Roseanne, even. And we worked together on Argo, and on Argo we called him up and said we were working on a project. We'd love you to take a look at. Jean Dujardin I'd gotten to know over the year of Descendants and The Artist, and so all these guys were basically friends of mine, and we called them up and said, and Cate, we'd worked together and we're good friends, and I asked them if they would like to come play for a few months, and they all said yes. It was also the first war where and the first war where anyone ever didn't keep the spoils. It's the first war ever. This is the one where we actually gave it back, and that's an incredibly honorable thing. It's also a very smart thing to do when you realize, when you see what happens to these cultures when you don't. It was an incredibly useful tool in sort of bridging the gaps along the way of reconstruction as well. So again, it's sort of like, if you had an American flag, it's, I have one that was over the coffin of my Uncle George, and it's folded in a triangle, and I wouldn't run into the house to get it if it was on fire and it meant certain death. But if you're standing there and a couple of neo-Nazis are stomping on the flag, and it could also means certain death, you might go in and do something about that. It's about, it's really about the idea that these pieces stand for something more than themselves. A specific painting or a specific piece of art, you could argue you probably wouldn't go running into a burning building to save, even if it was the Mona Lisa, if it meant you were probably going to die doing it. But that's not what this is about. What this is about is, when Hitler did this, and I've seen it happen in other places in the Sudan, it's not just about destroying the people themselves and killing the people. It's about destroying their culture and their history. So if it meant saving the culture of your generation of people, that's a very different reason to try and save something, and well worth risking your life for. Because it's your history and your culture is what it is, the timeline of our lives, and it is how we can look at certain times in history and understand where we were as human beings. And so it's all we have. So if you take that away, we're losing our identity. So I think that's the reason. It's not just about sort of a specific piece of art. It's about the idea of the culture and destroying it. Grant read the book. I think he got it at the airport. It wasn't one of those things where the studio comes in and says, "Hey, we got a book." And we were trying to do a film, because Grant and I have been doing films for a long time. We've been working together for 30 years. And most of the stuff we do is pretty cynical and we think it's funny, but we're not really very cynical people. We're actually pretty happy, normal people. And I said, we keep doing these movies, the Ides of March and films that are really fairly dark. And I said, we're the least dark people I know. And I said, we should do one sort of film where the good guys win, and we should do one of those. And we started looking at old John Sturges films like The Great Escape and things like that when we started to do this film. And we thought, well, let's do this kind of a film. And it's also nice because, to do a World War II film, it's very hard to do one with an original story because we know them all by now. And so the fun part for this was that most people don't know the story of truly the greatest art heist in the history of the world, by far.